going to be a much longer video because the 3 minutes that TikTok gives me just isn't enough for me to fully articulate my opinions when it comes to this whole anti-Semitism that's going on against the Jewish community. Because initially, I'm going to be honest with you, I thought maybe Kanye would have had his little rant about the Jewish community, he would have gotten cancelled, and then after a week or two, the anti-Semitism stuff would have died down. But no, it has actually continued to escalate. More and more people, both white people and black people and Asian people, I've seen a couple of Asians, have all began to regurgitate, Jewish conspiracy theorists, or at the very least, they're discussing why is it that we can't A, criticize the Jewish community when we see that the Jewish community is doing something wrong, and B, why can't we say, the Jewish control the media? Because when you look at all the major medias in the world, they're all run by Jewish people. It is very indisputable fact. It's not like I'm making this conspiracy theory up. You can just go and Google, let's say, the top 50 media companies in the world, look at all the CEOs who are running those companies, and you will find that 45 out of those 50 would have probably been run by a Jewish person, right? And a lot of people asking, well, it's just obvious, why can't I say it? So I wanted to kind of give you guys my thoughts and opinion on this, and I think the reason why this anti-Semitism has gotten to such an extent is simply because, the way it's been handled, right? A lot of people, when let's go back to Kanye. Kanye was pretty much talking about how he felt like the Jewish people were essentially mistreating him and mistreating his community, right? Because he works in the music industry, and he feels like because the music industry is run by the Jewish community, he was able to identify the people who he felt was mistreating him and cheating him out of stuff, and in the extent of that, mistreating black people who entered into that industry. Many people jumped into the gun quickly and said that what he said was anti-Semitic, to point out the fact that the Jewish people are the ones in charge of these companies, and he shouldn't really have said that. And a lot of people then began to ask questions like, hold up, if it was a white-run business or if it was run by a Chinese business, to point it out, would that have been, I guess, white racism or, anti-Asian racism? Like, the disparity between what is anti-Semitic and what is racism is always skewed to some extent. And obviously this has got people asking questions, and that's the first flag. If people hadn't jumped to the gun and just maybe, how do I put this? Because he did throw some anti-Semitic stuff in the mix of his rant, and that's why I felt like it's harder to defend Kanye. If he had just stuck with the simple fact of, saying things like, look, I'm in the music industry, I look at the person who owned the company, he happens to be Jewish. Okay, I look at the next company, the guy who owns it is also Jewish. I look at the next company, the guy who also owns that is Jewish. At some point, I'm going to start thinking, you know what? This industry, this sector is run by the Jewish community. And a lot of people know that obviously when the Jewish community were being discriminated across the world, they were pushed into the finance sector over time. And that's how they became, finance and media, obviously. And that's how they became kind of good at what they do, essentially. And then, obviously, he started going off about how black people can't be anti-Semitic because they are also Semitic people themselves. I guess maybe East Africans could probably fall in Semitic stuff because, Afro-Asiatic languages can also fall in the Semitic realm. Okay, fair enough. And then this blows over because now people do this thing. And then obviously, he started criticizing the Jewish community, and that's another thing that you can't seem to do. You can't criticize the Jewish community, which is odd because even though, let's say for example, black Americans, who we all know have gone through some fucking hellish shit, and they've gone through Jim Crow, they've gone through slavery, they've gone through redlining, they've gone through all the bullshit that you could possibly think of, being abused in the medical field, they've gone through it all. And yet people are still comfortable enough to criticize the black community when it comes to their rap culture, when it comes to the way that they carry themselves, the way that they dress. People criticize the black people all the time. right? And yes, sometimes the criticism can fall onto the realm of racism, so people call it out for being racist, but obviously people tend to still criticize the black community to some extent, and they can get away with it. Now, the same thing can't be done with the Jewish community. In fact, every time someone has tried to criticize the Jewish community, they are very quick to call it anti-Semitic, which I can understand because black people tend to do that the same thing when it comes to them being criticized. If you criticize, for example, how rap culture tends to influence the youth to commit more crimes or behave in a certain manner, people are quick to call it racism, right? Or have a reaction to it that is like, oh, here we go, another racist person about to criticize the black community for what we do. So I understand their quick defense to wanting to be criticized. But again, this leads to people into going to, hold up a minute. How come I can't criticize the Jewish here right here? Now, see, people are so quick to want to believe conspiracy theories that they're looking for all types of excuses, right? So when you say, oh, I can't criticize the Jews, maybe they're hiding something. Let me dive in deeper. It just sends people towards the conspiracy realm, and they end up saying shit like the Jews control the media and things of that nature, which to some extent they kind of do. I mean, everyone, you know what I mean? What else? What has happened? Okay, and then you have Kyrie Irving, I believe. He's a basketball player. He was forced to apologize for sharing a video, I believe, and the video was titled "From Hebrews to Negroes" or some shit like that. And he was told to apologize. He didn't want to apologize at the beginning, and then he was dropped quick by the basketball team that he was on. But what I found funny is that this video, right, from Hebrews to Negroes, right, it's available on Amazon Prime. Jeff Bezos allowed for that video to be on his platform, and yet Kyrie Irving was suspended for sharing the video. If the video is such a controversial thing, why is it allowed on the platform to make Jeff Bezos money, but Kyrie Irving can't share the video? This is the confusion that I get. It's like you're banning this guy for sharing the video, but it's allowed on the platform, right? It's interesting. I think I saw another thing where Kanye was removed. A wax or something of Kanye was removed from a wax museum, but Adolf Hitler's wax statue is still there. Again, what's going on? This has led to a lot of people assuming that there's something going on, and that's the problem. It's like the way it's been handled, it's only feeding into the conspiracy theories against the Jewish. But at the end of the day, like, it kind of also proves the Jewish concerns right. Look how quickly we've all gotten when it comes to anti-Semitism against the Jews. Very quickly, to be honest, really. I wasn't too surprised about white people because obviously they have been waiting for this shit for a while. But I was kind of surprised that a lot of black people also had anti-Semitic stuff against the Jewish, which was interesting because, for me personally, I've never really thought much about the Jewish community, so I was kind of surprised. But there's a lot of things going on here, and it's getting messy. It really is getting messy. Kanye isn't really stopping anytime soon. He's pushing back, saying that the use of anti-Semitic is a way to silence people who want to criticize. Because this thing, you should technically, right, criticize any community as long as it's based on factual, objective statement that isn't riddled with hatred behind it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we criticize white people all the time. We criticize the Chinese people all the time. The CCP. We criticize various African leaderships across the continent. We criticize everything. But when it comes to criticizing the Jewish community, that's when it's like a big no-no. And that has people questioning, like, what the fuck is going on? I can't criticize these people. You know what I mean? Even black Americans get criticized. And they get criticized a lot. It's always debated on social media, on news outlets, on discussion podcasts. They get criticized consistently, but the Jewish can't. See, and when you have it like that, it just sets a precedent for well, from what we have now. But anyways, that's my thought on it. It's very incoherent. I get it, but hopefully I've made some sense in what I'm saying.